Benjamin Franklin. Political leader, writer, inventor, quite the figure, really. A symbol for the United States.
Absolutely, a household name.
And you likely know the highlights, right? The kite, maybe the Declaration of Independence, the Franklin stove.
The classics.
Okay, but let's really dig in here, because this deep dive, well, it goes way beyond those familiar stories. We've pulled together a pretty diverse set of sources.
We really have everything from, the standard Wikipedia info and some great educational stuff from Benjamin Franklin House in London, all the way to a declassified CIA document, which offers a rather surprising take.
Yeah, and even a technical paper looking at possible, though maybe speculative, links to the Philadelphia experiment.
It's quite a mix, and what's striking right away is just the sheer range of Franklin's impact and how differently these sources look at him.
Definitely. We're going from solid historical accounts to, well, some really thought-provoking, maybe less conventional ideas.
And the goal here is really to peel back some layers, get beyond just the standard biography.
Exactly. So let's start with Franklin, the organizer, the guy who brought people together. It seems like he had a knack for this, even when he was really young.
Oh, absolutely. You see it clearly with the Junto, which he started in 1727. He was, 21?
Just 21. Incredible.
And this wasn't just a club. It was a structured group. Artisans, tradesmen, all focused on improving themselves and the community through discussion.
So it shows right away he understood the power of, collective effort.
Precisely. Even that young.
Like a little think tank, almost. And the model for it, apparently, came from English coffee houses.
That's right. Those were the hubs for Enlightenment thinking back then, buzzing with ideas.
So the Junto members, they were serious about learning.
Very much so. Reading was central. But as the sources point out, books were, hard to come by and expensive.
Right.
Which led Franklin to this brilliant idea. Why not pool their resources? Start a common library just for the members.
Mutual benefit. Smart.
Incredibly smart. And that idea, that was the seed for the subscription libraries we still have today.
Wow. That's a huge legacy just from that one idea. But he wasn't just focused on books and discussion, was he? He was practical, too.
Exactly. Very practical. Look at the Union Fire Company in Philadelphia, 1736. He founded that, the city's first organized fire protection.
Shows he was thinking about public safety, the real-world needs of the community.
Definitely had a very proactive approach.
And his vision for Philadelphia, especially around education, was, ambitious.
It really was. And it wasn't just a fleeting thought. He first dreamed up this idea for an academy, a charity school, and a college way back in 1743.
So the idea was brewing for a while.
It took time, yeah. But he kept pushing it. Published his proposals relating to the education of youth in Pennsylvania in 1749. Big step. Then he became president of the academy that same year. And by 1751, the academy and the charity school actually opened.
And that eventually became the University of Pennsylvania.
That's the one. He was even his provost for a few years, starting in 49. So, yeah, foundational figure in American higher ed.
Just amazing institution building. And there was another one, too, the American Philosophical Society.
Yes, started that in 1743 as well. The idea there was to create a space specifically for scientists and thinkers to share their work.
So constantly promoting the exchange of knowledge.
That seems to be a core theme for him, absolutely, advancing understanding.
Okay, so we have Franklin, the community builder, the organizer. Let's shift gears a bit to Franklin, the scientist and inventor. This wasn't just a hobby, right?
Oh, not at all. It was a lifelong passion. His electrical research is famous, obviously, but it often connected with his other activities.
How so?
Well, think about King George's War. The Philadelphia government was dragging its feet on defense. So Franklin steps in.
Takes charge.
Pretty much. He raises a militia, the Association for General Defense. And he didn't just organize it. He helped fund defenses like earthworks and cannons.
Oh, wow. So practical necessity driving action again. But the science, the kite experiment is the big one everyone knows.
It is iconic, isn't it? Demonstrating that lightning is electricity. That was huge.
A game changer.
And it led directly to him inventing the lightning rod, a practical, life-saving device born straight out of that scientific insight.
And that work got him noticed internationally, right? The Royal Society.
Elected as a fellow, yes. Big recognition. It really showed how connected seemingly different parts of nature were.
A real aha moment, like you said, with tangible benefits. But his curiosity went way beyond just electricity. That experiment with the cloths on the snow.
Oh, yeah. That's a great one from 1761. He noticed darker cloths absorbed more sun, melted the snow faster.
Simple observation, but profound.
It was an early look at what we now call black-body thermal radiation. He even wrote it up carefully in the letter. And later, he tackled smoky chimneys, published on that in 1787.
Always applying science to everyday problems.
That seems to be his MO.
And the Benjamin Franklin House in London, their materials really highlight this inventive side, too.
They do a great job. They point out things like wooden swim fins he made as a kid in 1717.
No way.
Yep. And the Franklin stove, of course, much later in 1742. Plus his early writings on electricity. They show how practical his scientific thinking was.
And what about that glass harmonica? It sounds unusual.
It is. But the demonstration they have shows it perfectly. It's this blend of scientific inquiry, understanding vibrations and resonance, with creating this beautiful, functional musical instrument.
And Mozart composed for it.
You did. That tells you something about his quality. And they even have images of kids interacting with a model of it today. It connects science, form, and function beautifully.
Art and science merging. Okay, and the canals. How did he apply the scientific method there?
Well, you notice boats seem to move differently in shallow versus deep water. So, like a good scientist, he didn't just guess why.
He tested it.
Exactly. He built a model canal system. Little boats, different water depths, controlled weights pulling them. Very systematic.
A proper experiment.
A perfect example of observation, hypothesis, and fair testing. There's even a diagram showing how his model worked.
It's amazing how these small-scale things link to big principles. And Benjamin Franklin House seems really good at making this stuff accessible.
They really are. Their discovery room has interactive replicas, gets you thinking about form versus function, just like Franklin did. And the Student Science Center is aligned with the UK curriculum, focusing on hands-on science methods. It's very well done.
Okay, so we've covered organizer, scientist. Now let's look at Franklin, the public servant. He was deeply involved in shaping the country.
Immensely so. I mean, think about the Pennsylvania Hospital in 1751, first hospital in America. He was central to establishing it.
Foundational work.
And the postal system. He made huge contributions to making it more modern and efficient, something we often just take for granted.
Definitely. And then there's the Great Seal of the United States. His design idea was something else.
It certainly was memorable. He was on that committee in 1776. His proposal wasn't picked, but wow.
What was it again?
The motto was, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." And the image, it was Moses leading the Israelites, pillar of fire, Red Sea parting, and King George III cast as the Pharaoh being overwhelmed.
Whoa! Talk about a statement.
A very powerful symbolic statement drawing on history and religion. Really reflects his mindset at the time.
And his political roles within Pennsylvania itself were significant, too.
Absolutely. He served as president of Pennsylvania. That was the title then from 1785 to 88, and later as governor from 1790.
Plus postmaster general for the whole U.S. under the Articles of Confederation.
That, too. And we can't forget his diplomatic role. Ambassador to France. Absolutely crucial.
Critical. Getting French support was a game changer in the Revolutionary War. But this is where our sources take a bit of a turn, right? That CIA document.
Yes, this adds a really interesting layer. The declassified CIA paper looks back and suggests Franklin's, well, his big ego, as they put it, might have actually put U.S. national security at risk while he was in France.
Seriously, the CIA analyzing 18th century diplomacy and egos. What's the reasoning?
Their analysis suggests that British intelligence was quite successful in penetrating the American Commission in Paris. They imply Franklin's personality might have made the commission, or perhaps him personally, a bit vulnerable. Less guarded than ideal, perhaps.
So, a potential blind spot, despite his diplomatic skills. That's a fascinating perspective from an intelligence agency looking back.
It is. But the document also points out a great irony.
Which is? That
even though British intelligence apparently did have successes getting inside information, British policy failed, the Americans still won the war.
So the intel might have been good, but it didn't change the outcome.
Exactly. It's a really compelling wrinkle in the story. Adds complexity beyond just the heroic narrative.
Definitely adds intrigue. Okay, and now for the really speculative part. This connection, however tentative, to the Philadelphia experiment.
Right. This is where we step into much more unconventional territory. The paper we looked at is upfront about being partly speculative.
Good that they state that.
Yes. It tries to analyze the alleged experiment. You know, the story about the Navy ship, intense electromagnetic fields, invisibility, maybe worse.
That whole legend.
Using the physics understood in the decades before WWII. And it leans heavily on Nikola Tesla's work. The authors frame it as a what-if, kind of exploration, pushing boundaries.
Okay, so it's a thought experiment grounded in some science, but definitely hypothetical. How do they try to connect it back, even conceptually, to someone like Franklin?
Well, they don't suggest Franklin was involved, obviously. It's centuries apart.
Yeah.
But they trace a kind of conceptual line. They talk about Tesla's rotating magnetic fields.
Which Franklin did some early, simpler work on with magnetism.
Right. And the paper links Tesla's ideas via the work of Gabriel Cron to Einstein's unified field theory, specifically something called the torsion tensor.
Okay, getting technical now. Torsion tensor.
In very basic terms, it relates to the twisting or warping of space-time. The paper suggests a possible theoretical connection between these complex physics ideas and the weird phenomena supposedly seen in the Philadelphia experiment.
So, drawing a very long, very theoretical thread from early electromagnetism to super advanced controversial physics, what specific claims about the experiment do they try to tackle?
They look at several things. They mention Tesla's own 1917 idea about using powerful electrical fields on ships for defense, suggesting maybe that influenced people like Vannevar Bush later on.
A key figure in wartime science.
Right. They also talk about magnetic stealth, radar-absorbing materials, RAM referencing work by Sommerfeld, and pointing out how hard it would have been to make effective RAM back in the 40s.
Okay. What about the really wild stuff? Invisibility, teleportation.
That's where it gets even more speculative. They explore potential side effects of an incredibly intense magnetic field. Could it agitate the water? Ionize the air?
Plausible physical effects, maybe?
Possibly. They connect this to work by people like Slepian and Kirst, and they discuss physiological effects like seeing flashes of light, magnetophosphenes, Purkinje patterns.
Weird visual stuff.
Exactly. And interestingly, they note that both Franklin and Volta had observed people seeing light patterns when subjected to electrical stimulation way back.
Huh. An old observation meeting new theory.
And then they briefly touch on really high-level concepts from Einstein's unified field theory, like torsion and something called anhalonomity. Anhalonomity.
Yeah.
It's roughly the idea that the path you take or the order you do things in affects the final state in certain complex systems. And they speculatively link those concepts to things like teleportation or even time travel. Extremely theoretical.
Extremely. So they're trying to build a case, however thin, for some kind of scientific plausibility behind the legend.
It seems like an attempt to argue that, based on the physics and tech knowledge potentially available or conceivable around that time, the whole story isn't completely dismissible as pure fantasy. They acknowledge the hoax arguments, but suggest there might be something there, technologically speaking. They even give a nod to the Moore and Berlitz book that really popularized the story.
But again, stressing the speculative nature of it all.
Very much so. They call it a what-if exercise themselves. It's a huge leap from Franklin's documented work, obviously.
It is, but it does make you think about how early scientific curiosity, like Franklin's, can echo down through the centuries, even into these really fringe, contested areas.
Absolutely. That fundamental spirit of inquiry Franklin had, that willingness to just try things, explore the unknown.
Yeah.
You sort of see that reflected across all these wildly different sources we've looked at. He just kept pushing boundaries.
Okay, well, this has certainly been a deep dive, hasn't it? We've gone from Franklin, the practical organizer,
Building communities.
to Franklin, the scientist making fundamental discoveries, the statesman shaping a nation.
And then into these more complex, even potentially critical views, like the CIA perspective.
And finally, these really speculative connections to fringe science. It's an incredible range.
It really is.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is that centuries later, he's still this figure who sparks so much interest in such varied interpretations. People are still actively digging into his legacy, debating it, looking at it through all these different lenses.
So here's something to leave you with. Think about the vast scope of what Franklin definitely achieved. The libraries, the lightning rod, the diplomacy. Now consider these more debated, even improbable ideas, sometimes linked to his work or his era. How might exploring those, even the speculative ones, challenge or maybe even expand how we understand his total impact on history and science?
It definitely gives you food for thought. Maybe encourages a bit more digging on your own.